Good afternoon and welcome to the Design Review Board meeting for Tuesday, February 17th. I'll call the meeting to order. We have Deputy Mayor as well as Chair of Planning, Lanny Yankoff, joining us in online. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest today? Not seeing any. Approval of our agenda, moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Beck. All those in favor of our agenda today, we have one item. Okay. Adoption of our minutes.
In favor.
Thank you. From design review minutes from January 19th. So I need someone to move to adopt those minutes. Moved by Brian, seconded by His Worship. Okay. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? You're good, Deputy?
I'm all good.
We'll move right into the report, and we are here to hear about 68 Queen Street with a whole bunch of PID numbers. Laurel Palmer, is going to present, and the applicant's here too. Sorry about that, Laurel. It's been a long day.
Just go down to full screen, Jason.
Yeah, just hang on. Start there now.
Okay. So good evening, Madam Chair, members of Design Review Board. This is 68 Queen Street. It's a request for design review to confirm the exterior design for a proposed 7-story mixed-use commercial and multi-unit residential building on the subject property, which is 68 Queen Street, PID numbers 336982, 336974, 336909, 336917, 336966, and 172915. This is also, the building is a mixed-use residential building. It includes parking, which will also be contained on the first and second floors, as well as commercial. Sorry. So the subject properties are a group of lots bounded by Queen, Dorchester, and King Streets. The property also shares an interior lot line with the Bishop's Palace. PID number 336982 is located on Queen Street within the downtown Main Street zone, and the remaining properties are located within the downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone. So this is the Queen Street property. The remaining properties are in the downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone, and Queen Street has the frontage for the property. So design review requirements as per section 7.1 of the zoning and development bylaw. New buildings within the 500 lot area are required to undergo the design review process to ensure that the architectural design of proposed developments within the 500 lot area maintain a high quality of design and are constructed with a consistent type and quality of materials. From a design perspective, new buildings in the 500 lot area are to be a building of its time. They're to complement and be compatible with existing buildings on the surrounding properties and blend rather seamlessly with the streetscape. So the proponents have submitted a design review package containing facade drawings, elevation drawings, and a proposed site plan for the development. Jason will pull up that PDF later. We've included a few with the slide. So the design review process, as per section 3.143, the design review process in the zoning and development bylaw, the design package as submitted by the proponents was forwarded to a design reviewer to conduct a review of the proposed development for conformity with the intent of the zoning and development bylaw, including the design standards for the 500 lot area and criteria for evaluation of design review. The third-party design reviewer provided a recommendation as follows, and with regard to the building form, scale, mass materials, and architectural quality, and requested variances. And just to note, the design reviewer was Greg Munn. He's a licensed architect in Prince Edward Island, and that was included within the report. So these are just a couple shots of the project. This is the view from Queen Street. So within the design reviewer's recommendations, on front facade width and height, he stated the north facade on Dorchester Street is long but carries the roof line height and of the buildings to the north and is broken down to be read as a cohesive collection of the three buildings with relief in the facade provided by open and inviting public alleyway that will connect to King Street and successful transitions from the more residential east and towards Great George Street to the commercial nature of Queen Street. The proposed building will easily be twice as tall as any other buildings on the sidewalks of King Street except for the Welsh Owen Building, Kettle One, which was the former Piatto Building located kitty corner on Queen Street. The building sympathetically meets the streets, but the overall massing as it will be perceived from North and South and Queen Streets must be addressed. So the recommendation on building orientation and corner lots, the building successfully addresses the street with appropriate entrances that are inviting. It is recommended to utilize the large storefront windows as shown on the plan at the corner of Queen and Dorchester. And the architect who is here with us now has also indicated that he is in agreement to that. So, building materials, the upper floors are designed to have a dark and light wood-grain vertical metal cladding. It is noted in the City of Charlottetown Zoning and Development Bylaw, which was updated October 24th, 2025. Section 7.45 states that the appearance of building materials shall be true to their nature and should not mimic other materials. It's the reviewer's opinion that the bylaw requirement has become outdated as metal siding with wood grain has become more sophisticated and architecturally expressive in recent years. I believe the wood grained metal siding is appropriate here. So for bonus height, strictly speaking, the lot is not wide enough to allow a bonus height application. However, the orientation and situation of this lot visually separates the Queen Street portion of the proposal, and it becomes part of the greater Queen Street facade of the block. The side street fronts are 167 feet, 2.5 inches on the Dorchester Street side, and 188 feet, 11 inches on the King Street side. It is the opinion of this reviewer that these lot frontages are appropriate to take into consideration as the actual lot frontages, and therefore the lot frontage meets the criteria for the request of bonus height variances. So in regards to step backs, the reviewer indicated that the bonus height variance would be more acceptable if the setback bylaw were more closely adhered to. This would mean that the fifth and sixth floors that are currently at 2 meters were stepped back to the prescribed 3 meters, 9.8 feet, and the bylaw require that the seventh floor have a step back of 6 meters, 19.7 feet. So for the floor plate, by adhering to the step backs prescribed by the bylaw, the floor plate would be decreased to around 900 meters squared or now 9,687 square feet, which is much closer to the required 750 meters squared. So the design summary from the reviewer, it is recommended the project is approved if a compromise on the step backs on the fifth, sixth, and seventh floors could be accommodated, as this would not only lessen the massing of the building overlooking Dorchester and King Streets, but would also lower the parking required to be within the bylaw requirements, and bring the floor plate to the seventh floor to within a reasonable area that is only slightly over what is allowed. An alternative recommendation would be to remove the seventh floor by bringing down the height of the massing of the building. The building would not dominate the skyline as much as the current design would, as this would also eliminate the parking requirements from 45 to 39 stalls and floor plate variance request. So just to point out the variance summary, there's a height variance to 7 stories. These are the requested variances to 7 stories if bonus height cannot be justified. 40.4 foot variance would be required. So if bonus height is justified, there would be no variance for that, but if it isn't, it would require that. So that would be 15 meters to 25.5 meters, which is 49.2 feet to 83.6 feet. The step back above the 4th and below the 7th floor on King and Dorchester Streets, the bylaw requires a 3-meter step back, a 2-meter step back is proposed. Therefore, a 1-meter variance is required on both sides. There's a step back above the 7th floor in King and Dorchester Streets. The bylaw requires a minimum of 6 meters or 19.7 feet. Step back, a 2-meter step back is proposed, therefore a 4-meter variance is required on both sides. The step back above the 4th floor interior lot line, that's the east side of the building facing the Bishop's Palace. It requires a minimum of 10 meters or 32.8 feet on an interior step back. A 6.5-foot step back is proposed, therefore it requires an 8-meter variance. Frontage or lot width requirement for bonus height in Queen Street, the proposed lot frontage is 13 meters, 42.6 feet. The bylaw requires 41 meters or 135 feet, and minimum lot depth of 36 meters or 118 feet for buildings taller than 69.9 feet. Therefore, a 28-meter or 91.8-foot variance is required for frontage. And just to note that staff are in agreement with the design reviewer's recommendation on that for the variance. Increase to the allowable floor plate from over 8,072 square feet, 750 meters squared, to 11,797 square feet, or 1,096 meters squared, therefore a variance of 346 meters squared, or 3,724.3 square feet is required. There are some additional requests. This would require approval of cash in lieu of parking for approximately 6 parking spaces. A lot consolidation for PID numbers 336-982, 336-974, 336-909, 336-917, 336-966, and 117-2915 will be required to assemble the land to form one property. And this will also involve the rezoning of PID numbers 336-974, 336-909, 336-917, 336-966, and 117-2915 from downtown mixed-use neighborhood to downtown Main Street zone. So, some additional comments. The design reviewer indicated in his report that he supported the requested variances with exception to the variance request to the step backs on King and Dorchester sides of the building. Therefore, it would be helpful if the board would indicate if the building can be constructed generally as presented with the required step backs observed. If the design review board has concerns with regard to the requested variances, these concerns should be identified during this design review process. This will help to ensure that the application proceeds with some level of success to planning board, as opposed to being returned to the design review board because certain variances could not be supported. So overall, the staff recommendation is we're proposing to support the development concept subject to the design reviewer's recommendation concerning the windows at the corner of Queen and Dorchester Streets, that the building be constructed with a deep-set doorway and large windows wrapping the facade around the corner as shown in the floor plans. Also that the step backs in the 5th, 6th, and 7th stories on Dorchester and King Street facades that were referenced earlier be observed. As noted by the design reviewer, for a building that is requesting an increase of up to 69.9 feet, a step back of 3 meters or 9.8 feet is required for the 5th, 6th, and 7th floors below the 70 feet. Above 70 feet on the 7th floor, a step back of 19.7 is required. And planning staff would welcome any suggestions the design review board would offer with regard to the massing of the building as well as the step back treatment on King and Dorchester Street. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, as well as Robert Haggis is here, who is the architect for the project.
Thank you, Laurel, for your report. I'm going to open it up now for some discussion from the board. Any questions on the application presentation that we just had in front of us? Aaron?
Jason, do you want to pull up the?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Actually, just one question for Laurel, actually, first. Can you clarify, so part of this application is a request for the density bonus through the bonus height. So who makes that decision as to whether the application, I don't think it's the design review board who determines, so there seems to be some question as to whether this is meeting the intent of the bonus height or not.
So bonus height, through the chair, we basically need to know if the design review board supports the building with the height. If they feel the design is appropriate with that height, then if they do, we take it to planning committee and planning board, and it's up to them to approve the actual bonus height application, because that's based on the public benefit that's proposed, which is the alleyway between Dorchester and King Streets. That's what they're putting forward for the public benefit. So if we know that the design review board supports the design with the height, then we will take it for the bonus height application to planning board and planning committee.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other questions at this time, Aaron? Wait?
I have some, but I'll wait. I'll let some other people talk for
Okay.
a second here.
Your worship?
I just want to say, Laurel, the report is very comprehensive, well done. A lot of work went into to this report, to this design review board, and same with Wade Munn. But if I look at PID number 1172915, that is the alleyway. Can you bring that up? The alleyway? What image is that?
It's a whole other set.
It's in that set of drawings too.
Oh,
We
okay.
want to skip through it.
All right, this one's.
Just go to 48 of 69, 48 to 69. So when we went to public tender for this alleyway, I don't know if you were part of that discussion, Laurel, but there were some residents that talked about alleyways in other jurisdictions
Back to the second page.
that are being used for this purpose. They become public art alleys, they become kiosks for services. I think this really adds a lot to the whole project. And I look at the history that was referred to by Wade and his comparison to what existed 4 stories back in early 1900s shows that, you know, we're slowly growing as a city, going up rather than going out. So I think, like, the report and what's presented here, I really appreciate what both you and Wade have done, and also the architect, Robert
Thank you,
Hayes.
Your Worship.
Yeah.
Greg Munn, actually, Your Worship, sorry.
Wade?
Yes.
Yeah, no, Greg.
I can click page at a time.
Yeah, let's just stay here for a moment.
Cheers.
Do you have something now, Robert, you wanted?
I would. I'd just like to talk a bit more about the concept and how we arrived at it. It wasn't a quick exercise. We did look at the required step backs stated in the bylaw. But for a number of different reasons, it just didn't make the project viable in terms of vertical access, floor plates that we needed to accommodate 40 units, the 20,000 square feet of commercial space for the Class A tenant on the 6th and 7th floor. It's what they needed. But what we did do is try to meet the intent of what the design review guidelines are set for the Lot 500 area. And that's creating a base for the building. And that's where we have our 4-story section. You can see there in blue and pink with our 2 levels of parking. And then deliberately stepped it back 2 meters, not 3, but 2. And visually, it accomplishes the very same thing. I don't want to point out or talk about other projects, but one recently approved, the urban residents on Great George Street, did not do this. They went straight up 6 stories. I don't think that was correct, but it was approved and it moved forward. So both in terms of materiality and the step back, we believe we've accomplished that in making the form and scale feel more appropriate with the context around it. In terms of the parking, yes, we're shy 6 spaces, but again, there's a number of developments in downtown Charlottetown that have no parking, if at all, any. And we essentially accommodate 90% of the parking requirements on the property. That was something the client wanted. That's something the development deserved with the apartment units and the commercial space on the upper floor. The corner just of Dorchester and Queen makes perfect sense for a commercial tenant, restaurant, cafe would be great. Now, the activated passageway or alleyway, that was a very deliberate thing. And it came out of, honestly, consultation with neighbors around the property who are all very much in support of this. Even in the gentleman who lives in the blue house just up from Dorchester, which this would be much taller than. And what it provides is a space for people to get directly from King to Dorchester, but it's also meant for public artwork, murals, food vendors. It also allows for access to the commercial tenants that front Queen Street from the back pedestrian alleyway. So it should be a kind of a fun, activated space. And we have a few renderings that best represent that, I think. If you maybe flip to one of the last pages. Another thing in terms of the height, you know, if to be approved with the bonus density, which comes with one of these amenities, whether it be public art, LEED certified, 3-bedroom units, there's a list of, I think, 10 or 12 items within the bylaw. There would be perfect justification to push to the 9, 10-story mark. That would be under the 106 that would be allowed on a bonus density height, but both ourselves and the client felt it important not to breach the soffit line of the rectory there. The spires are completely in view, and so we pulled back to the 7 stories. That in combination with what would make the project economically viable is how we landed on the size of building. If you continue just to the very end, there's perspective images. Yeah, keep going there. Yeah, right there, and then maybe the one previous. So that would be from Dorchester. This would be from King Street. It's not a large space, but it's definitely welcoming from our perspective. What we see here is the residence access that would be off King, and then up Dorchester would be the commercial tenant access on the 6th and 7th floor. In terms of materiality, very deliberate with the brick being used on what we consider the base, those first 3.5, 4 stories. We pivot to a undulating metal siding. Yes, it is a kind of a faux wood textured siding, but from afar, you really wouldn't pick that up. You do feel that as you get closer. And the intent is to have that shift from floor to add some rhythm and movement in the building. And then finally, the 7th floor with the required or suggested setback of, 6 meters. Again, that takes away from the commercial tenant space that they need, that 20,000 square feet. But we went to a curtain wall system to help lighten the building at that 7th floor. So there is a visual effect. So that's just some few. It's a curtain wall. It's all glazing. So you go from that solid brick to the lighter wood undulating corrugated metal siding to another color but same product to a glass. I'll leave it at that, I guess, for now.
Brian Gillis, go ahead.
The first comment is that I'd like to offer my thank you to putting together a very, very excellent presentation that allows for the urban context and the massing and the character issues to be understood. So I really think that this should be a standard for other applicants when they bring forward a project of this intensity in the downtown, to have the proper visuals to explain it and to give feedback. The other design item relating to the alleyway, I would give high marks to. And I've seen this in other historic cities. In Victoria, British Columbia, there is in Bastion Square a similar alleyway that is also in proximity to sort of the sort of downtown amenities. So those are strong points. I struggle with the massing on the scale side of it in terms of the interior major item. And I think the design reviewers' suggestions for some relief, I would be supporting. That I think it really has merit to try to lessen the impact through setbacks. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you have anything you want to chime in on at this point?
Sure. I'm curious, how far is the architect for the current project, how far are they willing to amend their plans to accommodate the design reviewers' recommendations? That's my first question.
I certainly respect Greg Munn's comments. I understand where they're coming from, but they are quite black and white from the bylaw. He's suggesting that we go to the 3-meter step back above the 4-story. He's suggesting we go to the 6-meter step back above the 6-story. We knew we couldn't do that, just again, from a programmatic perspective. So we did our very best, both in form and texture, to make it visually appealing and feel not as big. Hence, the reason why we put forward the variance applications, the rezoning application, at the very same time we applied for the design review. And I guess to answer your question, it's primarily economic driven. There is a request for the square footage that is presently carried on the 6th and 7th floor. A 6-meter step back, we'd lose at least 1,600 square feet. A meter doesn't sound like a lot going from 2 to 3. But if we were to do that, we would likely lose close to 9 residential units. The spaces just become too tight. They would be gobbled up by the adjacent apartment unit. And for all those reasons, we arrived at this. And again, it was an exercise. We tried the 3 meters. We tried the 6 meters. We tried 8 stories, 9 stories. We consulted both with planning and neighboring property owners, and ultimately arrived at this design that everybody felt quite happy with. And I will argue, again, I get the idea of going from 2 to 3 meter step back for the 5th, 6th, 7th floor, or 4th, 5th, and 6th floor. But visually, I don't think you will really notice it if I was to pull it in that much from this perspective, as an example. And on the north side, fronting St. Dunstan's, it's at present, majority is a parking lot. So there's no real issue with overshadowing.
Just to clarify, on the Dorchester side, the reviewer didn't require the step back as per the bylaw because it is an interior lot line and adjacent to a parking lot. So,
St. Dunstan's, yeah.
yeah, so it was, he agreed with the 2 meter step back on that side.
Yeah.
Thank you. Aaron, I know you have another question.
Yeah, just a few comments. I think on one, I don't think the size of the building it doesn't bother me at all. I think we're going to face increasing need for density. It's a fact. So some of these next comments are maybe geared more towards some finer grained things. I think the alley, for one, if we could go to the plan, I think in principle, I think it's a great idea. I think what makes me nervous about it is the lack of any reason to go in there. There are no shops in the new development. It's 10 to 11 feet wide, and it's 7 stories high on one side of it with limited access to daylight. And I know right now, maybe some of those buildings on Queen Street will kind of have another front added to them. I mean, that's a possibility. One thing did note, I mean, the building footprint is 88 feet wide, your floor plate. You know, parking garage 62, 64 feet wide. You know, is there an opportunity to actually introduce commercial spaces at that street level? I know there's a whole bunch of other reasons. I'm nervous that, you know, I think about the alleyway that goes between Tim Hortons and the BDC building back to the Queen Street Parkade. Very similar scale, very similar kind of blank walls going back through. I know the public art does help, but with Queen Street, you know, 40 feet away, I'm not sure why people go in there. There's no entrances to the building in there. So in concept, I like the alley. I think that there are some things there that make me a little bit nervous that it becomes not what you want in there.
Definitely agree with you with the alleyway adjacent to Tim Hortons and cutting through, but it's a kind of a meandering path. I don't know if you've walked it. In difference here, there's a perfect viewscape from Dorchester. It's a straight line, and it is tight. There is, but you know, in larger major cities, urban centers, you have these interstitial spaces which are used for other things other than service. That alleyway has to be there to provide service to those commercial tenants, but it can be doubled as this activated, and we do see it as a seasonal concept. There was a worry of it being a dead end and there being security issues, so having that line of sight and be able to see through, providing not only just service but pedestrian access made sense to us. It's likely that it will be shut off in the wintertime, and only in the summertime would it be activated. In terms of, you know, wayfinding and knowing that it's there, there can be things that can be done from signage and things.
Yeah. Just, again, comments. Another, I guess, question or discussion, almost coming back to the rezoning. So I think the intent is that there's a downtown Main Street kind of corner building, and then the rest of the properties that are currently downtown mixed-use neighborhood will be rezoned as downtown Main Street, if I understand that to be correct? Sorry.
What was the question?
So the
Portion of the lot is on the
is
downtown Main Street,
and then the
correct.
rest of it, the application is to
DMUN,
rezone it as
yes.
downtown Main Street?
To be, if it's a singular building bridging two zones, it didn't make sense, so it was suggested rezoning
Right.
that to DMUN.
So
or
what
to-
I find kind of strange is then there's things that come along with making it a downtown Main Street. So to me, the first two stories being parking garage
Site
and
plan.
blank facades are not really in support of what the downtown Main Street is meant to be. They're meant
Right.
to be activated facades. So
Yep.
you're asking to take the advantage of the height and bonus density, and yet we have quite large sections, 90 feet of, I'll call them, you know, very little animated, very little storefront, very little anything other than parking garage
Right.
on those side streets, which I think is unfortunate. to be quite
Yeah,
honest.
so maybe we can jump to a couple of perspectives on King and Dorchester. I totally understand and hear what you're saying. There's two primary entrances, one to the commercial, one to the residential, which helps. Then yes, you're greeted with a brick wall and a garage entry. You know, at the moment, we're showing kind of this octagonal shape that might support like the growth of ivy. Windows can be incorporated. The idea of adding commercial, though, I get that. We're just going to lose the parking spaces that are necessary for the development. At the moment, the design reviewer's suggestion to reduce the building height is to meet the parking requirements, but that's a bit, it doesn't make much sense. I totally agree with you on the commercial and activating. Directly across the street from in both instances is residential. So as you work your way up Dorchester and King, it goes from, you know, commercial to residential. So it does a flip quickly. So to provide commercial on that street facing residential across the way, it doesn't necessarily make sense to me. I understand in principle the downtown or the downtown Main Street zone is front facing. It's facing a major street, whether Queen, Grafton, and this is a little different. I agree. And we can keep the zones as they are. It just makes sense to bring it to a singular one.
Yeah, anyway, I think.
I totally agree with the
Yeah, I'm
commercial
not-
concept, yeah.
Yeah, I think just in principle, again, this is it's a long facade. And I wonder that it loses something for the urban scale of of the building, again. It's subdivision of a very large infill project. And I think, again, the massing of this building, I think the intent when you look at the city's official plan, if you look at section, they talk about the 500 lot area. The objective is ensure that the first 3 stories fronting on Main Streets matter the most. So, they talk about materiality, they talk about detail and articulation. And I think when you're moving around this building, it starts to, like, the King Street side doesn't maintain the brick. As it goes up King Street, it switches into the metal siding quite quickly. Anyway, that's just a few comments on the overall kind of elements of the building.
Just gonna, do you want to respond to him before I'll give you another question to his comment? In terms of the brick facade and stuff shifting pretty quickly when you're looking at design as soon as you move on to the side streets.
If you can maybe go to a perspective on ground level, to be in kind with what Aaron's talking about. Maybe the next one, or the next perspective. So you're saying transitioning from the brick to the metal, is this what you're talking about, or?
But just on the first 3 stories, or I guess four
okay.
stories, right?
Yeah.
That lower base, like I think it's successful. Like I think the zoning bylaws and the step backs, they do help. They do help the massing to that upper
I agree.
part. I just wonder if that whole, first 3 stories or 4 stories that you have as set as the datum there is one material and kind of treats. It would help differentiate what's happening above.
For the first 3 stories?
Yeah.
And then the 4th being something else, I see. Or as
sorry, what-
drawn, you're saying like,
Are we
so
fo-
to extend.
I'm always a
the-
little confused with the small windows just above the transom. Are we 4 stories there, Robert?
No, we're technically 3 stories, and the first story is 16 feet high,
Okay.
as required by the
Okay,
bylaw.
okay,
Yeah,
so
so
3.
there's clear story windows. So I mean, the extension of the brick, I mean, that's an easy one. Again, the step backs, those are the hardest ones to give up. And quite honestly, to help the building become viable, I think we've done a fairly good job in comparison to many projects that have recently been completed. Again, to meet the intent. I would argue, and we could show, a meter step or pull back from both Dorchester and King, you won't really notice it from this perspective. If we turn around, if we rotate, and we look at the Dominion building, that goes up 8 stories straight. It's step back from the street, yes, but it's flat open space, parking stalls, sidewalk, and then large buildings straight up. It doesn't really address the street nearly as well as this, I think. Mind you, there was no design review process back when that was developed.
Thank you. I know, Brian, you have a question or a comment?
More of a question. Not to dwell on the alleyway, but the Daniel J. McDonald building was designed with an alleyway, and through the course of time, it's been turned into a closed-in space. And I think much to the, let's say, enjoyment of the community, and it's probably talked about in terms of security issues that they made that decision. This alleyway sits on private property. What is the history of the transfer of title of the alleyway?
It was purchased from the city by the owner.
It went to public tender, and the owner of this project purchased it, and his feedback from the opening of the tender and those, I think there was a public meeting. There was a public meeting on that sale. And some opinions came from that are reflected in what we're seeing here in the design.
So my question is, this project can be approved today, but because the landowner has title to the property, is there any obligation or protection for the public interest in maintaining this through either the city's conditions of approving the design or covenants that would maintain an open space?
That's a question to Michael or Laurel.
Yeah, so
Oh, sorry, would you mind repeating that?
Given the fact that the title to the alleyway is currently the landowner's, it's not a public right-of-way, it is part of the design considerations that's being discussed today as a trade-off for many aspects of the project. So will there be some custody of ensuring that it's going to have the purpose that's being suggested here maintained? And I use the reference to the Daniel J. McDonald building where the landowner, the Crown, decides that they're going to put up a chain link or a fencing around it, and it's no longer that passageway that is an urban sort of opportunity.
Yes, through the chair. That's a difficult question. From what I've seen on most projects like this, it would remain private because it is owned now by a private developer. It's not public. I don't believe the city could take an easement on it unless the property owner decided to grant it. And if the city were to take an easement, the city would essentially be responsible for that alleyway. The only other thing I could think of is through a development agreement, because we'll be looking at the variances when this proceeds to planning board. And it involves rezoning applications. If there was terms and conditions that the board thought should apply to that alleyway or council felt should apply to that alleyway, then they could possibly bring that into the approval process for the variances and the rezonings. But I think it would be somewhat limited because it is private. But I could see clarification on that also from our legal counsel.
Well, we just sold it to them, so we're probably not going to want to do an easement, just as a clarification, right? We did just sell the property owner the land, so I think it would be, unless I'm wrong in that thought.
I should clarify, though, that this is what is being proposed for the bonus height, so this is the public benefit. So we could address it through a development agreement, the terms and conditions for the public benefit portion, where we're allowing them to achieve that bonus height.
Yeah.
So there would be.
And I think that's what Brian is suggesting, is that there has to be something stipulated. But just let's go back to the alleyways. The alleyway going into Tim Hortons, that was, again, not an alleyway to be functional. It was just to get into the back of the building, as Robert stated. And the alleyway that exists between Grafton and Kent Street, that was actually more than an alleyway, Brian. That was more, it became a throughway for cars to dip into, like, cross from Grafton to Kent back to Grafton to skip lights. But then in the strike, I think the strike, there was a back strike, and for security reasons, I think that steel fence went up.
Never was a vehicular access. It was primarily pedestrian.
Yeah, I saw vehicles go through it, including my own.
A few boulders could have,
Yeah. So, can I just go back to Greg Munn's review? He doesn't mention anything about or refers to the alleyway, which I think is, where is it? I'm looking at his summary, I'm looking at his bonus height, conclusion. I even did a search on it. But I think what Brian has stated about the public good of this alleyway, I think we have to ensure that it's kept open and that, there's potential for it to be commercialized with the stores that are facing on Queen, that could face on, similar to what you had with Beans Cafe, how it faced on to Veterans Affairs, and same with Shaddy. So there's potential there for the owner of this property, but I think it's got a lot of potential. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Beck?
Yeah, I had the same question as Aaron, just stay on that picture there for a minute if you would, about the brick and maintaining that kind of distinctive part and keeping as much of it on the ground level as we could. Just on the other side too, where it says the Monarch, I don't know if you can go to there, Jason? Yeah, you can see it there. See above the Monarch, it's that metal cladding comes down. Could that brick go down and then just again differentiate from the ground part, maintain that brick right over to the, because it goes right by the artistic mural there. It's brick and then maybe just keep that brick right all the way over. Okay.
Thank you. So, Deputy Mayor, do you have anything at this time you want to ask or clarify?
The overall design, personally, I mean, I'm no designer, I'm no architect. I just don't have any issues with the current design as it is. I certainly respect the design reviewer and their suggestions, but I just, I see it. I know the developer and the team went out. They talked to residents. They had input. I mean, I don't really have any other comments except for that. I just overall, generally, I quite like the look and feel, and I think it would add a really improvement to that area of the downtown.
Thank you. So right now, planning staff are recommending that the design review board approve the proposed building facade as per the design reviewer and staff recommendation, which would have included all those changes that we heard about through the report. Is there someone that's willing to put that resolution on the floor? Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Beck. So what we're saying then is that, just so I'm understanding, that this would be approved as per conditions of the developer adhering to the design review recommendations. Is that correct? Is that what I'm understanding, Laura?
I think so.
I think that's, but I think the applicant has said they're not willing. to
Well,
make
and that's
those-
why I want to clarify here, when we put the resolution on the floor, we're hearing, Deputy Mayor Fiat looks and says that she likes what she's seeing. I'm hearing you like what you're seeing, but we're saying now in this resolution that we will approve this if the developer adheres to, which we've already heard he won't, but we'd still have to vote on it.
Well-
Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, Greg's report is predominantly very positive and supportive of it. The corner glazing commercial level, like, we're totally on board with that. He brings up the step back, and I understand why, because it's black and white, it's in the bylaw. I totally get it, and I respect it. But that is the reason why we put forward a variance application with the design review package, very same day, because it's what made sense to us. This is what we felt was the best look aesthetically, architecturally, but also supports a building footprint for 40 units as opposed to 30, or a 15,000 square foot Class A tenant versus 20. So I guess we're in agreement with that comment on the glazing, but the step back, it sort of kills the project, at least from the developer's perspective.
And that's fair. It's just that right in front of us tonight, we have a recommendation to support with designer review and planner's recommendation. So Laurel, can you provide some?
So just to be clear, the design reviewer, Robert's right, he's looking at the technical aspects of the bylaw, but he's looking, like, the job of the design reviewer is to review the building in context of its design. So part of the process was, does the project warrant the variances, the design of the building or not? Like, that was part of the review, the project that we gave him to review the design. So the way it would work, you could either approve this project as per the design reviewer's recommendation, and the application stops here, like as far as the design review's approval. But if you decide that you don't agree with the design reviewer's recommendation in regard to the step backs, then we would forward a recommendation or a resolution on to council, and it would go to the council floor for them to determine whether they agreed with either the board's recommendation on approving the project as is with the step backs as presented by Robert, or approving the project as per the design reviewer's recommendation. So they would have those two choices.
So we either support as
The
is,
board's recommendation, and if
and then
they
it
didn't-
stops, and otherwise it'll go on to council, and
Yeah.
council will have the opportunity to have that discussion. Okay.
Yeah, so if the board doesn't agree with the reviewer's recommendation, then it goes to council. And if it goes to council, they have to determine whether they agree with the reviewer's recommendation or the board's recommendation.
Okay.
Let's just simplify that.
And then we need to get that determination before we take the application to planning board.
Yes, because of the variances that are going to go along with the application. Correct. So the current recommendation that we have on the floor was to approve staff and the design review, which would mean in order for them to proceed, they would have to adhere to the conditions that were outlined in the report. If we don't support the planning staff and design review critiquer, or whatever we want to call them, I'm not sure the word, then it will move on to council for council to make the final determination.
Okay, so Madam Chair, just point of order. If I go to page 14 of 69, conclusion, planning staff are proposing to support the development concept subject to the design reviewer's recommendation concerning the windows. Is this what we're putting on the floor? This conclusion? That's what I want to clarify.
So, yes, through the chair, our recommendation is
Is in the conclusion?
is in the conclusion, but we also posted the recommendation on, I believe, the second page of the report.
When you start.
So staff are supporting the design reviewer's recommendation because we're not architects, and this is why we send this project out through the design review process, is to get a third-party recommendation. It's just for us to lay the information that the reviewer presents to us out to the board. Now, the board has to basically determine, do they agree or not agree? The other option I was wondering is there a possibility of presenting a lesser, like not exactly what the bylaw requires, but more of a step back?
Yes, I mean, we could exercise that, and we have already. And again, it's a balance between, again, 40 units versus 30, 20,000 square feet versus, it might be 17.5 in commercial space. And that is the primary issue, and that's the reason why we put forward the variance request. I mean, I'm a design reviewer. I've done many of them. I've disagreed with the design and put forward suggestions. The planners have sided with some of my suggestions and some not, but the design review committee decided, no, the design was sufficient. Urban residence being an example. I did the review on that, made a number of recommendations similar to Greg's, where there was no step backs, but it was approved by this board. In difference, we didn't want to take that route, and that's why we worked in the step backs as best we could. And from a visual architectural perspective, I think it accomplishes the intent of the design review guidelines specific to the Lot 500 area, more so than many other projects. I've already stated that we were willing to make the adjustment to the corner of Dorchester and Queen. Those step backs would be just hugely detrimental to the overall size of the project, again, economically, making it viable. So I guess the question is, and similar to Ms. Yankoff, what she mentioned, do people feel that it's appropriate in the way it looks now? I've heard some say yes. I've heard some question it. To step back an additional meter on the Dorchester King side, to step back 6 meters on the 7th floor side, or 7th floor, that would be a question for the developer, but I'm quite certain I know what he'll say. And I think his primary worry is that he will lose that potential tenant who's marked for it. And it could, sort of kill the concept, I think.
Fair. Any other questions on the resolution on the floor right now?
Yeah, I'm still not entirely clear exactly what we're being asked here. So if His Worship put on moved, and I seconded that, we accept the report, but that's with the setbacks involved. Okay, so then if that's the case, then it ends here, right? And
If
then
we-
they would have to decide if they're going to go ahead with the project or not? Like, we're basically saying, you have to adhere to the 3-meter setback and you have to adhere to the 6-meter setback if we approve what's in front of us tonight.
The resolution that's on the floor, yeah.
I'd be curious to know, again, I don't mean to point to another project, but how the urban residence was approved, even though it didn't respect the step backs, even though it didn't follow in suit with some of my recommendations. But it was still approved. This board or a previous board approved that to move forward.
But Laurel, just one other thing, Your Worship, if I could, before, Laurel did also say that if we do not approve this, it goes to council to be decided upon, correct?
Yes, that is correct, if we don't support the recommendation.
So, just to be clear, how can I phrase this in simple terms? You can either pass a resolution or a recommendation on the report, staff's recommendation as it currently sits. If you don't agree with the design reviewer and staff's recommendation, and you feel that the step backs as per the bylaw are too restrictive, and you feel that the project as submitted by the architect is appropriate in mass and scale and whatever with those step backs, you can pass a recommendation to approve the project as presented, not observing those recommendations on those 2 step backs on the King and Dorchester side. And then it would flow through to council. Council has to determine whether they either agree with the design reviewer's report and staff's recommendation or the change in resolution from the board, like the change in recommendation from the board.
But we're asking, basically what Greg Munn is recommending that setbacks go. The applicant is requesting relief from those setback requirements. Personally speaking, I think the project is too good for us to have everything decided here. I think that it has to go on for further consideration myself. How we get there, but does that mean rejecting this recommendation from staff? Or, because I think there's too many questions here. I think we've got a respected design reviewer giving his opinion. We've got respected architects and building people who have made some interesting points here today. And we have a developer who has, in order to make this viable, requires these variances to be. So I think if we accept it, and if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it has to be moved on for further discussion, I guess is my basic.
And I think what we have to, so we've had the design concepts, which is subjective in some capacity, right? And then we have the planner's recommendation that's kind of coming in based on our current zoning and development bylaws that are going to require modifications and adjustments. So that's where it's a little bit, in my opinion, different than other applications that we've kind of voted on at this board level. But Laurel?
So through the chair, if the board decides tonight that they don't agree with the design reviewer's recommendation on those two step-back requests on the King and Dorchester side, you're basically saying that this project is approved as the architect submitted and designed it. So the only discussion that will be when it goes to council is, do they approve the resolution to approve the project or not? Council's not going to debate the design. They're just going to say, we either approve it or we don't approve it. And if they don't approve it, then it has to go back through revision and back through this process. Or if they do approve
So-
it, it proceeds to planning board.
Me on, or can you? If the resolution that's on the floor is to support, if that resolution does not pass, then basically what we're saying, we'd have to put another resolution on to accept the project as is. Correct? Is that clear as mud for everybody?
No, it's not, no. Again, Jason has put up the staff recommendation. That's the same as page 14, which is the conclusion. But then I was told to go back to page 8, where the staff recommendation is. So just tell me what resolution that we have to put on the floor, and then if we have to amend it. Tell us what we have to do, because I just want to make reference to another point here when we get this settled here. So could you tell us? Yep.
Your worship, through the chair, Director Mike made a good point. I can explain it, or would you prefer to explain it? It doesn't matter to me.
But could you answer my question? Are we on page 8 or page 14 for the recommendation on what we're voting on? What are we on? That's all I want to
So
know.
this is the staff recommendation?
So this is what we're voting on.
Yes.
This is the recommendation that's on the floor. Okay, so that's page
So-
14.
So that's like, that is actually the conclusion in the staff report.
I know.
The actual staff recommendation is at the top of the report on page 2. So, but that lays out, the conclusion lays out the issues.
Page 8, but Madam Chair, it's not the same. It's,
No, it isn't, because the
isn't.
conclusion lays out the points.
okay. All I need, Laurel, I just want to find out how we can amend it if it's agreeable by the seconder to get this moving through the system.
So Mike and I just had a discussion, and that's
Okay. I'll
what,
shut up.
we're going to point that out.
Thank you for the, just through the chair and further to what Laurel was talking about. It appears that, at least from what I'm hearing from the discussion, that the only point of contention is the step backs. So if the design review board is overall supportive of the project, but is open to flexibility on the requested step back variance, then you could amend the motion, noting as such to go on to council.
Okay. I know Deputy Mayor wants to say something, and then Aaron has something to say. Deputy Mayor?
Sure. Well, I guess there's this resolution on the floor that does need probably some amendment, because to me, if I was putting the amendment or the resolution on the floor, I'd be saying that I would be supporting the application with all respect to the design reviewer. I would be accepting the architect for the design project as is, because in my opinion, it accomplishes the intent of the design review bylaw, and we're going to capture the other requirements through planning board and council with the variances. So I know for me, I'm not supporting the staff's recommendation. I feel that this project meets the intent of the design review bylaw as is, and I would like to be able to now go on to the next steps, so this project can continue on with its variance applications through planning board.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We will actually have to vote on the resolution that's on the floor, but then we can come back with that. Aaron, do you have something else?
I'm not sure. So I think part of the confusion is that the design reviewer has put forth not an approval, actually. I think that's what's confusing about this, and it's unfortunate. He should have said it's not approved, because he's saying it's approved upon certain conditions upon which the applicant has said they're not willing to do it. So we have a kind of double negative happening here, I think, which is part of the confusion. So in the past, as the design review board, we have been asked to either support the recommendation of the design reviewer as presented or not. If we support it, all well and done, moves on, but we're supporting a negative. That's the strange thing here, if I'm understanding this correctly. And so really, by rejecting the design reviewer's recommendation, that's, I guess, from the applicant, that would be the best outcome. We're not, we're moving it to council to make the decision. Like, we're not inherently.
On the variance, not on the, not on the building,
On
on
everything.
the setbacks.
On the,
Which will require.
Well, there's several in there, right? There was the parking minimum, there was the 2 meter and 6 meter,
Correct.
and another one on the north facing.
Frontage, because it's based on the smallest lot line, right? Fronting a road. That's the only reason, but you guys support that, as does the reviewer. So the primary are the step backs.
The two sides.
The corner glazing, which we said we would
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But it really is the step backs. So
2 meter and 6 meter.
we're presently already at 2.
Yeah.
He wants us to move it to 3,
3.
which is in the bylaw.
Yeah,
On the 7th floor, we're presently at 2. We go straight up, change it to the glazed curtain wall for visual purposes. He wants us to step it back the 6 meters that is in the bylaw.
Yep.
We've tried it. We can't make it work. That's the issue.
Yeah. Okay. So the resolution that we put on the floor was that we accept the design reviewer and staff's recommendation, which means that we accept all those conditions in it. So are we ready to call a vote on that resolution? Do you
just
have another
before we
question?
do that, what happens if this gets accepted and what happens if it gets rejected? I'm still not entirely clear on that.
If it gets accepted, it ends here, right? And then if it gets rejected, it moves to council for discussion and decision.
That's what my understanding is. I just want to get that publicly clarified.
And if I'm not correct, please correct me, but that's what the deputy indicated.
So through the chair, if you support staff's recommendation and the reviewer's recommendation, essentially the project is approved, subject to those step backs that the bylaw requires. You also have the option of approving the application as presented, and the only thing that's not supported by the design reviewer are those 2 step backs. So that would proceed to council, and council would either vote to approve the step backs as submitted by the architect or not. So they would be approving the project as per the design review board's recommendation, not staff's recommendation. So it's the same as at planning board. Sometimes you agree with staff's recommendation, sometimes you don't. We forward that recommendation. If it's planning board, it goes to council. So the board's recommendation was to approve or to reject. It's,
kind of 2 applications, like we put in variances and setbacks, and today.
but you're confusing the variances. So all we want to know is, do you support the design of the building with those variances, or do you not support the design of the building? So if you don't support those 2 step backs, you're basically saying you
The
agree with
design's
the
gonna look
design
really
reviewer.
different. If, right, so we're looking at that picture, and we're looking at that, say, do we accept that design? Because if they don't have the setbacks, it's gonna look completely different. So it's kind of different facade.
And I would greatly argue, and Aaron, I don't know, you can support it or not, if you go to the perspective, to step back an additional meter, visually speaking, I do not think you're going to feel it very much at all. And the 6 meter step back at the top, sure, but we're going to lose a lot of square footage. And again, that was deliberately why we went with the curtain wall versus continuing with the metal cladding. I don't think you're going to feel it as much again, I understand Greg went to those 2 points and helping to reduce the mass. I just don't think you're going to see it or feel it as much. Perhaps the 7th floor a little bit, but it would be a big loss to the development.
So, Madam Chair, we have Greg Munn that gave us a report with, as Aaron said, 2 negatives. So we have to turn this down. That's my understanding. Reject it. Do we put another resolution on the floor to go forward to planning board? Is that correct?
Through the chair, no, Your
No,
Worship.
we're not going to planning board.
Deputy, you can speak to this because you're very versed in this, where
Yeah.
I'm pinch hitting here and I'm not near as expert.
Yeah. And although, yes, I know what Laurel said, this is very similar to when we're in planning board. We're either going to accept staff's recommendation or we're not. The only difference is that in planning board, whether we accept or whether we don't, it still goes on to council. In this situation, if we accept staff's and the design reviewer's recommendation, it stops here.
Yep.
If we don't, council gets to make the final decision. And the part that I'm hearing is that we have 2 design reviewers, one who's part of this project and one who has been the sober second thought that we've done because of, as per the bylaw. The architect for the project is clearly saying that they feel, and as I agree, that it meets the intent of the bylaw, and the minor recommendations that Greg or the design reviewer is asking for is not going to really change much in the streetscapes and the look, but it is going to affect the bottom line of the developer. So for me, I can't support that, and I hope that the rest of you would reject this resolution and we start with a new one for the sake of a project that is so desperate for downtown Charlottetown and is really meeting the intent of the bylaw. And then it can move on to planning board for the various planning applications that it requires through planning board.
Yeah. No, I should have said council, that it goes back to council because design review board is a decision-making body if it agrees with the design reviewer, correct?
Through the chair, yes, correct.
Yeah.
So we have had projects that have
Right.
gone before the board
Yeah.
before, where the board didn't accept the design reviewer's recommendation.
Yeah.
So it's the same process as previous applications. We might have had 1 or 2.
Just to clarify the process, so it goes to council and council
Only a
agrees
couple.
agrees with the rejection of the design reviewer's recommendations, correct? Then it goes from where, do we make the changes at council at that point, or does it go somewhere else through the system? Just for clarification.
Through the chair. So you're not changing anything when it gets to council. You're either approving this project as per the design reviewer's recommendation with the required step backs, which would diminish the massing on the upper floors, or you're approving the project as per presented by the architect.
All those other variances and stuff, your worship, would have to go through the planning board and stuff at a second.
That's
That's right.
that's.
But what we're being asked
I
is.
know, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to clarify. Council, then it goes through the planning board. But that, again, we're talking about some timelines here. We're looking at, would they be in March? Would they be in April? That's what's going to happen here. Is that your concern?
Well, yes, I mean, in fairness, I mean, this was put forward in October 1st. October 31st, apologies. And we're only now sitting down to go over it. I understand I wasn't part of it, but the design reviewer was requested to edit their report a few times, I guess. I've never had to do that with my reports, but I don't know why. But that added time to the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, if I may, and I don't know if this helps or hurts it, but, a resolution to proceed forward with as is, subject to the glazing at the corner being added And one other thing to note, and I don't know if you can pick up on it in the perspectives, but removal of the rooftop deck and including the stairwells and elevator that extend past that 7th level. So they are part of the perspective, they are part of the overall height, but remove that entirely. I know that's another, I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Question on the resolution, you mean?
Yeah.
Are we ready to vote?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I just wanted to add that I didn't get an answer to my timelines. Goes to council, then council gives it, agrees with the rejection. Then we have to go back to planning board for the variances. Does that mean 2 weeks going out to ask for those, public input? That's what I'm looking for.
So
Well, it has to go to planning board regardless
Well, no,
because
no.
of the variances.
That's what I'm just trying to get some of the timelines here.
through the chair, your worship, there's also a rezoning application and those variance applications that are in play. We need to know if the design is supported or not to be able to recommend to the planning board and to speak to the public on the design when we take the project forward. So if we have questions from the public on the design and the mass and scale, it's easier to support a project at a public meeting when you're dealing with a resolution that was either supported or not supported by the design review board. Do you know what I'm saying? I guess I wasn't very clear on that.
If there's a long
we need to-
process.
I think
Yep.
this, Madam Chair, this process, I believe in the design review board, but it's like we've spent 40 minutes or more just staff recommendation, and page this, page that. Like, there has to be a more simplistic way. Like this holds up development. And I think, from what I see on the whole concept of what's being presented, we can't amend this resolution to move this just to council and get it done like right away. Is there any-
David, your worship, David's online, and he might be able to give you a summary really quick, if you're okay with that, Laurel, on timelines. But what's a timeline, a realistic timeline, because for what his worship's asking? Do you have any idea, David?
Councillor McCabe, through the chair, realistic timeline, like if we have to go to council, it would be brought to council within the next few weeks at the next available meeting, if that helps answer the question.
Yes, but I think then the next steps is the public meetings and the rezoning requests. Those are going to take some time, right?
Yeah, sorry, correct. Sorry, I might have misspoke there. I was just thinking of the design review aspect. Right at current track, we would be able to bring a decision on those related matters by mid-April at this point. We laid out a path for the developers about a week ago about the steps along the way. We just have to send a revision to that by tomorrow, but we have capability to reach a decision on the related variance and rezoning aspects by mid-April at this point, if that helps provide further context.
Thank you. Laurel, you had something else you wanted to add?
Just to expand on David's comments. So because there's variances, we do have to do a notification letter. The rezoning also requires a notification letter. If this project just involved a rezoning and no variances, we would just take it to the March planning board and it would go through. Or if there were just variances, we would just mail them out now. But the best way to deal with this is to take the application for the rezoning and outline the variances in the report, requesting for a public meeting. Then the board would advance it to a public meeting. We would hold a public meeting. At the public meeting, we would discuss the fact that there's a rezoning and the variances, and then when the application goes back to the next planning board, the variances and the rezoning would either be approved or denied at that board meeting, at the second meeting. So everything would flow together through that
Once the
process.
design's approved. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I was just going to point out that the only thing will the only disruption in the timelines that we already put forward is an extra week because this has to go now to council. But so depending on what council, if design review board decides to not accept staff's recommendation, then it moves on to council next week and council supports design review board's recommendation. Then we're still pretty well still on track for that mid-April thing. But if design review board accepts staff's recommendation, then we're probably in a bit of an issue because we've clearly already said the developer and the architect for the project can't make things work with the changes that the design reviewer wants them to do.
Thank you.
That's all.
David, you had something you wanted to speak to?
Yeah, I just wanted to through the chair, I just wanted to reaffirm that the deputy mayor is correct, that if in this case, design review board differs from staff's recommendation and this goes to council for a decision next week, we have enough time in hand on the calendar to make for a mid-April decision on the variance and the rezoning. There'd be enough time based on the current schedule to make that happen based on the current meetings that are on the calendar right now. So I just wanted to reaffirm that. Just for context, if design review differs from staff's opinion, we could get a decision for the applicants by mid-April. If everything falls into place as we foresee it would thereafter.
Thank you very much. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, so just so when we go to the public, Laurel, the renderings or the project that would be taken would be what's there with the requests as outlined here. And the agreed upon part about the corner lot and glazing and all that stuff would already be in there, so that wouldn't be part of it. Okay, so, okay.
Okay, so we're ready to call the question on the 25-minute ago resolution that was put to the floor, where we said we were going to support staff and planning's recommendation, review boarders' recommendation to accept based on all those variances not being included. I'm tired here. What I'm trying to say is that we're talking setbacks and stuff. We're either supporting it as it is, planning staff proposing the development concept with the setbacks being observed, all of the things that are outlined in our package. Right, so we're either supporting, right, yes or no. So let's take a vote on, are we supporting planning staff and the design reviewer's recommendation? Not the applicant, the design reviewer. All those in favor? Well, you know, a no hand up means it's a yes vote. All those against?
I
I'm
am not
sorry.
in support of staff's recommendation.
That's a unanimous decision not to support. So this will move on to council.
Clarity, yeah.
He did,
I
yep.
think we need another resolution though with design
No,
review's recommendation.
they said
don't we?
it'll just go on that we did not support their recommendation and council will have that discussion.
Okay. Okay.
It was
Hopefully it's
unanimous.
hopefully it's very clear in the report because the council is not used to discussing design review stuff. So I hope it's more clear than it was this evening with all due respect.
I would tend to agree, Deputy Mayor. I'm sure you will be following up to ensure that that is accurate.
Just a point of clarification. So when this goes to council, do you come back in with the designer, the architect, Robert Hagas, Michael, and say,
No,
I'm just asking, just for the public record.
This
Is there-
is through the chair. This is no different than a recommendation that goes to planning board or heritage board that doesn't get approved. It just proceeds to council.
Yea or nay?
So staff's recommendation was defeated and staff will prepare the recommendation or the resolution for council from the board. And then council will either approve the board's recommendation or deny the board's recommendation.
And by us turning them down, our recommendation is basically saying we support the applicant.
Yes.
There.
I do not go to council and
Deputy
present
Mayor, you
another
better hurry up and
report
get
or I do not go to council and present another report or clarify anything. The report stands as it is, and that goes with the council package.
There. Okay, introduction of new business.
None.
Perfect. Motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Move, seconded. Everybody
you.
have a good night. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.